Now let's go under screening to transactions. That will pull up the screen that you see here. Let's look for M&A transactions. So if we click on M&A deals, we'll use valuations as a criteria. So you see all these categories here. We can see that the total transaction value is selected here, and let's say we want it to be greater than $1 billion. Remember, the units in CapIQ are millions by default. Let's add that criteria. And we get some huge number, right? 52,000 transactions. That's because all we've set as criteria is that it's greater than $1 billion. But let's add some other criteria just as we did with the company screening. So let's look for public companies only. And let's say that the buyer, we could say that the buyer and the target are public, but in this case, let's say just that the target is public. That narrows it down to 20,000. Let's also select that the buyer is public. So we've added that to the screen. There we go. Now let's add business description. The keyword is cloud. And we want that to be for the target. Add to screen. And once again, let's focus in Europe. Let's have all of Europe. And we could say that that's the headquarters of the target. So that results in 5 transactions. Maybe that's a bit too narrow. Why don't we remove that requirement and just take this list of 44. Let's click View Results. So here we go. Here are the 44 transactions for targets that had cloud in their business description over $1 billion. Here's our output screen. At this point, we may want to edit the display columns. In terms of the things that are outputted here in these columns, let's say we want to know what the TEV to EBITDA multiple was that was paid. For the target. And let's also add the enterprise value to revenue ratio, again for the target. Let's update the results. And if we scroll across, we can see the EBITDA multiples and revenue multiples of the targets. So that might be helpful in putting together a table of precedent transactions. And of course, you can export this to Excel as we did last time. And here it is for you in Excel with all of these transactions. And of course, you can filter through them, maybe delete the ones that are canceled and just look at the ones that closed. And you may look at valuations then based on certain types of comparable precedent transactions that you're looking for. So we've looked at how to do some specific screens for finding companies and transactions. Now let's look at the idea generation tool. The concept behind this tool is that there are a bunch of preloaded screens that you can use to look for ideas for business development. So if you work in investment banking, let's click into investment banking, you can see some of these pre-created screens that they've built for us. And if we scroll down, we can see the name of them, and they're pretty self-explanatory. So we can look for acquisitions of businesses by business keyword. We can look for active financial buyers. We can look for bankruptcies. We can look for canceled LBO deals. Let's look at companies that are actively divesting assets. As an investment banker, you may want to approach companies that are actively divesting assets, and you may want to look for opportunities for your existing clients that, say, may want to purchase assets. There could be some interesting business development opportunities here. So you can see the screen criteria that's set up here. You can always further refine the screening by adding some of your own items here and then viewing the results. So here we can see companies and the number of transactions where they've been a seller in the last 12 months. Let's go back to screening. Now let's look at investment management. We may want to look for bankruptcies, for interesting turnaround situations. We could look at CEOs with pedigree, for example. If we believe that the management team and their pedigree is really important for our investment strategy, that is something where we could look into this. So what the screen is saying is it's saying, first of all, look for all professionals with the job title that is CEO. So essentially find all CEOs. And they have a market capitalization that's less than $1 billion. And they have had previous experience as a chief executive officer or a president or head of investor relations or investment banking or whatever else you want to add to this criteria. So that's how you can build up a history or track record for a CEO and look for CEOs with certain types of experience if you think that is relevant to your investment style. Now let's look at idea generation for private equity and venture capital. We can look for, again, canceled LBOs. We can look for companies with more than 10 investors who have beat or missed their estimates. That sounds interesting. So you can see here, you can set a certain criteria for the size of the beat of EPS, whether it's greater than or less than their guidance or estimates. That's also an interesting screen that you could run. So you can play around with idea generation for whatever industry you're in to come up with ideas to find new business opportunities. So as you've seen now through several examples, the screening section is one of the most powerful areas of Capital IQ.